A direct look at the site. This tragic crash is having an outsized impact on commuters and on goods movement up and down the I-95 corridor. It's a key artery for the movement of people and goods, and that's why it's so important to make sure that it's restored quickly. The only thing that's even more important than making sure it's restored quickly is making sure it's restored safely. And I can't say enough good things about the coordination that I am seeing here on the ground between first responders, state officials, and our own federal personnel to make sure that that happens. I spoke with the governor just as I was arriving here. He indicated the coordination that has been key to making sure that funds are moving and that all the support that PennDOT needs to get this critical section of I-95 back up and running is in place. Our Federal Highway Administrator, Shaylin Bott, has been on the ground since yesterday, and our entire team is here at the service of everybody leading this effort locally. I particularly want to praise first responders who have not only been part of the immediate effort to contain and respond to the fire, but are now spread out throughout the zone where there are detours, helping to safely accommodate and redirect the traffic. I also want to note that SEPTA has stepped up in a big way, making sure that they add frequency on key routes like the Trenton line that can help to absorb some of that traffic and some of those commuters who have been impacted. So we're going to continue to be here every step of the way for as long as it takes, with both financial backing and any other technical support that's needed as PennDOT works to restore this and as local officials work to make sure that the impacts are managed and absorbed as much as possible. With that, let me step back for updates from others who are working this issue, and then later on we'll be able to do some questions quarterbacked by Ben from my press team. Secretary?
Thank you, Secretary, and thank you for coming to Philadelphia today. As I said yesterday, we have been focused on the demolition of the southbound structure. As you can see behind me, that process is well underway, and it will continue through the night tonight to get us to a conclusion of the demolition, and we can then proceed with a remedy that will reopen I-95. The governor and I are prepared tomorrow to provide that kind of detail at an event that we'll let you all know will occur sometime tomorrow. But we have finalizing plans for the reopening of I-95, and we're going to try and do it as quickly as we can. The coordination, as I said, with all the folks involved from the city and the Commonwealth, as well as our federal partners, shouldn't be lost on anybody. We've had wonderful coordination that has brought us to a speedy demolition process. The contractors that we have in place that were selected for the emergency work are busy proceeding with planning and the ordering of materials that we're going to need, including the contractor that will do the reconstruction beginning later this week. So I will turn it over to Leslie Richards from SEPTA so she can talk about the ridership and SEPTA's support of the traveling public here in Southeast PA. Leslie.
Thank you, Secretary Buttigieg, for being here, FHWA Administrator Bott, and of course Secretary Carroll, Mayor Kenny, and our local officials, fire emergency, as well as police. This emergency is obviously creating a serious strain on the region's transportation system, not just I-95, but on the roads throughout the city. And for SEPTA, the coordinated response with federal, state, and local levels has been exceptional. As you all know, Philadelphia is a resilient city, and your presence and assistance in helping the city and residents rebound more quickly is very much appreciated. We're very proud of all the frontline workers and, of course, the SEPTA's dedicated frontline workforce and all our operators and maintenance personnel, what they are doing to answer this call. We continue to evaluate options and enhance service for all who are impacted. And the service plan we put together immediately following the incident on Sunday has shown promise over the first few days. We're closely analyzing all of the performance and ridership to see what additional changes can be made. So we're here, and I want to remind customers of the service enhancements that are in place right now. We've added 3 morning inbound peak trains and 3 afternoon outbound peak trains on our Trenton line. We've increased capacity on the Trenton, West Trenton, and Fox Chase lines. There's also free parking at all SEPTA-owned regional rail lots. We have parking capacity at Levittown, Bristol, and Croydon. We've been able to make adjustments on the rail lines that could most directly help all of those who usually drive. But we know a major issue like this could also have ripple effects throughout the region and across our system. So we're also looking at our Market Frankfurt line, making sure that that's running reliably and the high-speed service that goes into the city. We're positioning trains and personnel to better respond to the increased ridership. And we have 500 parking spaces, just want to remind everybody, at Frankfurt Transportation, where you can catch bus service as well as our subway service. On our bus service, the 3 routes that are on detour, and we're seeing delays throughout the city through increased traffic volume. We're working with police and seeing how we can make those adjustments. But please know we are committed to working with everybody together to make sure that we can all get through this and get through this as painlessly as possible. Please continue to check SEPTA.org for all of the latest, because we will continue to make adjustments. And I just want to remind everyone of our service call center, which is 215-580-7800. We have people answering calls. Please call if you have any questions. We want to make sure that you get to where you need to go and you do it safely. Thank you so much. And with that, I believe we're taking some questions.
Ben is all right, everybody, we're going to try to get everyone's question answered. We'll start over here and move this way. Go ahead.
My question is for the Secretary of Transportation. When you say that federal resources will be at the disposal of Pennsylvania officials like our governor, is that in essence a blank check? And also, what does this timeline look like to you in terms of when 95 can be reopened in this part?
So I'll let PennDOT take the lead in terms of the specific timeline hacks that need to be met in order to get this safely restored. What I can tell is that they are already working in an innovative and very focused way to find the quickest, safe way to make sure that that this is restored and to minimize impacts during that period. To the first part of your question, yes, every resource that is needed will be made available. Of course, it has to qualify, but there's no question in my mind that that PennDOT will see to that. There's 2 tracks for that. There's what's called quick release funding, which we can turn around very quickly when there's a specific request for upfront funding. And then there's reimbursements that we provide for the costs that are incurred here. And again, there's no question in my mind that all of the resources that PennDOT needs federally will be available. We've already made clear that they're available ever since the governor's disaster declaration made it possible.
Right here. Secretary, today economists warning that this closure could push up the prices of goods. What's the level of urgency in getting this rebuilt?
Well, this is what a lot of people don't always see behind those inflation numbers is the importance of our supply chains. Part of what goes into the cost of everything that we pay for at the store is the cost of shipping. And if a route is disrupted, or if it's longer, or if trucks have to wait, that finds its way into the cost of goods. It's one of the reasons why I appreciate the work that's going on here at the state level with good local and federal coordination, not only to make sure that things are 100% fixed here as quickly as possible, but to pay attention to what happens between now and then. From the very first hours when I was speaking to Mayor Kenny on Sunday, he and his team were already focused on how to make sure that people and goods that had to be absorbed by the rest of the city could be moved as efficiently as possible. They're continuing to do that good work. And I know that that's going to make a difference. At the end of the day, there's no substitute for I-95 being up and running in full working condition, and that's the goal that everybody's moving toward here.
What's your level of concern that it does actually push up the prices of goods?
Well, look, it's one of many, many factors that can affect the cost of shipping, but here on the East Coast, there's no question that the effect will be upward pressure until it can be completely resolved.
Does your office or the White House have any preliminary numbers on the economic impact so far?
I haven't seen an economist's estimate of that, but what we know is that 160,000 vehicles a day on average pass over this section of highway. Shaylin, do you know offhand the percentage that's trucks?
It's about 8% is trucks.
About 8% of that is trucks. Obviously, that is a lot of America's GDP moving along that road every single day.
Go back here. What is really the impact of 8% of trucks not being able to get through here?
Well, look, what it means is that the trucks will have to take a longer and more costly route to get to where they're going. Now, I know America's truck drivers, they are creative, they find ways to adapt, they are resilient, and of course they're not doing that on their own. Again, there's going to be a lot of work, analysis, and support going into making sure that we make the most of alternative routes. We're even making contact with Google and Waze to try to optimize any kind of software information that is reaching drivers, whether it's commuters, travelers, or truckers. So they're going to do the best they can given this situation. But obviously, it is not just an inconvenience, it is a cost.
Mr. Secretary, like us, you must want to know what went wrong here. Has anybody given you a sense of what went wrong? And are you concerned about the flow of gasoline and dangerous products on our highways?
Well, NTSB has the lead in investigating this. They are very thorough, which means it will take some time to get the full results. We are, they don't report to me in terms of a timeline, but generally what they do is they have a full report that takes a while to return. Sometimes in the interim, they'll present a fact-finding report that provides some preliminary information. We are participating and supporting that process and doing our own work from federal motor carriers, highway, and PHMSA perspective, because of course we are concerned when it comes to hazardous material. I do want to emphasize though, there have been cases in years past where a section of highway or a bridge collapsed in broad daylight, seemingly at random. Of course, this is not that. This was an enormously intense fire underneath a structure that my understanding is relatively new in its construction. And the result of that much heat, of that much fuel burning, was of course what compromised this structure. But beyond that common sense level that we know what happened underneath this section of highway before it collapsed, I don't want to get ahead of the work that NTSB is leading.
Does it raise questions about design, about bridge designs when you have trucks like this moving about the highways?
Well, again, we're going to always try to learn from every case of what happened, just as in responding to this, we've been learning, and I know Secretary Carroll mentioned benefiting from the experience of what happened when there was a partially similar fire and collapse on I-95 in Georgia in 2017. But look, there's a certain level of damage, there's a certain level of heat and fire and stress on a structure that no bridge or highway can tolerate. Whether there are any issues that we can learn from for the future, that's exactly what the investigation is going to teach us more about.
Mr. Secretary, is the federal government working with these trucking companies to try and find them alternate routes to try and ship these goods by train or other areas? And should Americans expect to see supply chain disruptions for the next few months while this is repaired?
Well, there's going to be an effect, but I also think that that can be managed, and we already see in the local, county, state, federal partnership and the private sector response a lot of very good work being done to try to mitigate that effect. We certainly stand ready to help anybody who needs assistance, but we also see that a lot of these operations, they're built to contemplate the unthinkable, and in this case, already adapting to try to make sure that their goods can move on alternate routes.
Mr. Secretary, you mentioned the federal support for PennDOT and the rebuilding effort going on behind you. Is there similar support the federal government can give to SEPTA for the additional capacity that it has to add because of this?
There is, and we're working out the details right now in terms of what is eligible, but there are provisions that allow some forms of federal highway money to be used to support transit in response to emergencies, and we've been in close contact with SEPTA. Again, really appreciate the way that they too have stepped up in ways that the director explained a little bit earlier, and that's going to make a big difference for so many commuters who were impacted by what happened here.
Mr. Secretary, you're here very quickly in only 2 days. Why did it take you so long to get to that rail accident in East Palestine, Ohio?
You mean East Palestine, Ohio? When I went, I decided to break from the precedent, the norm that generally transportation secretaries don't go to active response sites. But part of what I found was important, especially when you saw all of the politicization and misinformation that the people of East Palestine had to deal with, is that we're just in a new world in terms of the importance of presence to help make sure everybody understands what is happening, the coordination that's happening, the teamwork that's happening. And so in the same way that I value the ongoing conversation that I have with people that I spent time with on the ground in East Palestine. I value the opportunity to be both on the ground and coordinating over the phone with everybody who's involved in the response here in Philly.
Mr. Secretary, just some of your initial impressions of seeing this close up, the magnitude of it, and I know you can't get into an exact timeline, but a ballpark timeline of how long this could take.
Well, there are a few things that I was struck by right away. First of all, the coordination, which you cannot take for granted between all of the different players here. Local police, fire, and first responders, PennDOT, SEPTA, the mayor and his leadership team, OEM here doing that emergency response, and all of our federal personnel. You can feel when that kind of coordination is happening, when there's good communication and collaboration, and I feel that here. The second thing that I'm struck by is the speed of the response. Obviously, the first step to making sure that this is reconstructed is to tear down the compromised structure. I saw images same day that were collected, both in public media imagery and in what we were able to get as an agency. And just the difference from then to now in not much more than 48 hours is striking. It reflects how quickly contractors and the public sector here have worked to make sure that's underway. Again, I defer to PennDOT on the exact timelines of that, but that step is going to be a critical early milestone before they get into reconstruction and recovery mode. It's one of the most striking things I see here. The third thing, of course, is just the enormity of what happened here. You can very directly see in the burn marks and the twisted metal what the effects are when thousands of gallons of combustible fuel burn directly beneath a structure like this. And in addition to, of course, our hearts being with the family, the individual whose life was lost, also a truly remarkable thing that there was not more injury and loss of life in this incident.
Hi, can I go back to the cause of this incident? Have you been given more information about the vehicle itself, the condition of it, whether or not there's any failure on the brakes or anything like that? Any more information on that?
I don't have anything on that right now. Those are the kinds of things that will emerge in the course of the investigation. We'll look to both law enforcement and NTSB to likely have the first public answers on that.
Next question is actually for Secretary Carroll. If you want to step up. We just heard Secretary Buttigieg talking about how quickly this is already moving. You said it yesterday, crews are on 24/7. Can you explain what the bidding process is for this project, or do you have someone on retainer?
No, there was no bidding on this process because of the emergency declaration and the emergency nature. We were fortunate insofar as there was a contractor already on site doing a different project on the interstate, and so the availability of that equipment that was exactly aligned with the need that we had here made it an obvious choice for PennDOT to join that contractor, employ that contractor, and advance the demolition in a speedy way possible in the interest of all of our traveling public.
What's the name of the contractor?
Abbanzinio.
Are you going to offer? Did you say that you're going to offer up a plan tomorrow on the rebuild?
As I said yesterday, we were focused on the demolition, and as busy as we are here with the demolition, we are equally busy in Harrisburg and in King of Prussia relative to the replacement plan, which we're going to be prepared to announce to all of you tomorrow.
Will there be any incentives in the plan for an early completion?
We're already working 24/7, sir.
Mr. Secretary, I wanted to ask you a question about some safety features that are on trucks. I know not all of them are mandatory, things like automated braking and anything. I don't know if we know what was on those trucks, but is the federal government looking to mandate some of these for some of these that are carrying hazardous materials, some of that, they're carrying hundreds of gallons of gasoline around like this truck. Should some of those features be mandated? Is that something you're looking into?
Yeah, we've got standards both in terms of the vehicle safety and in terms of the tank integrity on vehicles like this. Again, part of why the independent NTSB's work is so important is that often that can inform future policy decisions. Let me also just say that while our nation has been rightly paying a lot of attention to aviation safety and to railroad safety in recent months, one thing that it has been harder to get people focused on has been roadway safety, an issue that claims 40,000 U.S. lives a year. And I think this is an important reminder of just how vital and just how big an issue roadway safety is, whether we're talking about commercial vehicles, whether we're talking about hazmat, or whether we're talking about ordinary passenger traffic.
All right, we go. Last question right here.
So you talked about wanting to do this quickly, but obviously securely being the priority. Is there any help for some of the local businesses or people that live along the smaller roads that are going to be affected for this? that can come from the federal government or even state or local government?
So our authorities mostly have to do with making the state DOT whole for the work that they're doing on a reimbursement basis. But I know that the mayor has been very focused on ensuring that the community impacts can be managed. And if there's anything we can do that would be helpful, we certainly stand ready to assist. Thanks, everybody.